have a very exciting panel lined up. Let me just set in a little bit of context before I go to my speakers. We all know that in a largely male-dominated world, women are finally braving their feet to celebrate entrepreneurial ideas and pacing their way up to become successful businesswomen. Looking at the way things are, there's a lot of excitement, a lot of funds available. There seems to be a certain equalization of opportunities if we see largely. And we'll be discussing all this and more on this panel. The topic is role of women entrepreneurs with emerging business and the ecosystem. I request my panelists to, if I could, if they could hear me, all of them. I want to start my first question. I want to straightway go across to Ms. Naiyya, Saggi, founder BabyChakra. Thank you so much for joining us. Earlier in the day, I was in conversation with Mr. Sangvi and we're discussing a whole lot of opportunities that are there. So I want to ask you, do you think we have been able to develop a vibrant entrepreneurial landscape where women have equal opportunities? Do you think we have arrived at that stage?
Ruhail, you've posed the trickiest question a lot in the very beginning. But, first of all, it's a pleasure being here. This is a topic very close to my heart. I think to all of our hearts, actually, which is why we're discussing this. In a short answer, no, we haven't. But if I were to look forward, am I very optimistic about what lies ahead? Absolutely. Right. I think we already kind of know the data, around less than 2% of venture funding going to women entrepreneurs. So while you talk about these, billions that are flowing into the Indian economy, last quarter, we had more than 10 billion of, venture funding coming in, etc. But like, what of that is actually going to women-led startups and women-run startups and ventures? Right. Has always been a question. I think the second piece, of course, we also know this, unprecedented way and very unfortunate, largest gap in workforce participation by women in India today. Right. My mother's generation probably saw more workforce participation in sort of the, the white collared workforce than my generation sees today. Right. And I think that is a very, very big travesty we're dealing with. But why am I optimistic? I think going forward, a lot of initiatives happening. I think these events certainly bring to fore the challenges, how we're solving for it together as a network. Right. And, of course, we'll touch upon those topics going forward.
Upasana, Makati, at this point, if you can hear me. Same question to you. Do you think we have developed a system that is a great enabler, or do we still have a long way to go for women entrepreneurs to thrive?
I definitely think there is a very, very long way to go, because to start with, there are, there's patriarchy, or there is, that sort of germ that is in each of our homes in different forms, and we taste that in whatever quantity at some point in our entrepreneurial journey. So I think to start with, I'd love to start with an example. I had a great opportunity to mentor women from rural Maharashtra, where I did a program with Google and Shiros. And I think the first and the foremost problem that women faced in that scenario was men not wanting them to take charge. For instance, even if they had their own small businesses, the idea of the money going to the husband's account, was the biggest challenge that we had to sort of, train them and sort of make them unlearn at the first place, so that they're able to take their journeys forward. So I think dealing with that seed and acknowledging it, acknowledging that, yes, this exists, no matter it be a rural or an urban setup, this does exist in its form, in various forms, in every household. So I think once we address that issue, we'd be able to take stronger steps in, making sure that women have those equal opportunities and they are a force to reckon with, because the talent is there. But the whole idea of giving them that platform and letting them take their journeys the way they want to is what we need to work on. So I think we really have a long way to go.
Right. No, very valid points. Dr. Rajni Aggarwal is with us, the President of Federation of Indian Women Entrepreneurs and Secretary General, International Federation of Women Entrepreneurs. Ma'am, if you can hear me, where are we in this entire space of giving equal opportunities to women entrepreneurs? Have we arrived? Are there bigger challenges? Maybe some tech issues. So if Miss Subramanian, if you can hear me, the same question to you.
Yeah, thank you firstly for having me. And I think it's not a very fortunate thing to speak after two extremely articulate women and be asked to answer the same question. So respectfully, I'd like to agree with what both of them said. And Upasana, to add to what you've said, it's not just a rural issue. We work with music educators in Bangalore, in Hyderabad, in Chennai, in Mumbai. And so often we see this, please transfer the money to my husband's account. So, and I think it's this issue of women being willing to do the work, but being unable or unwilling to step forward and take control. So I do think we have a really long way to go, because the first step is creating the opportunities for women. The second is really about creating the atmosphere in which women can step forward and kind of assume positions of power without being judged or sort of being called boisterous or bossy or any of those terms that women get when men get called leaders. So I think there is a really long way to go, not only in terms of opportunity, and we know that, as Naiyya said, we don't get the same level of funding that men do. We don't get taken seriously the same way in boardrooms. There's often an assumption that there's some man behind us, in front of us, next to us, who's supporting us. So that's one big issue to deal with. It's getting better. And of course, it will continue to get better, and hopefully we'll get there soon. But that's the first part. And the second part is really the social structure around it.
Right. Ms. Saggi, I have this, we saw the recent Naiyya's IPO success led by a women leader, and there's a lot of buzz over it. However, if you look at the recent rankings, we have in terms of gender gap, we rank among the lowest still. I mean, in your view, one, from an entrepreneurial, ecosystem, what can be done, and what can the government do to enable that a certain equality is there among all the? Is there a level playing field for all of us?
Sure. I think, and again, I think we've all been exposed to the curves that we see, right? In terms of when do women tend to drop out of the workforce. And, I talk about the workforce being meaningful because once you're in the workforce, I mean, while of course access to capital, etc., all comes once you have the professional credentials and capability established, right? I think that's just the proxy why I use workforce in talking about when this sort of drop of women really happens. I think there are three structural issues that, are very, very evident. And, having sort of seen this firsthand while building out BabyChakra, we work with, more than 25 million mothers monthly. We're working with more than 10,000 doctors. We're sort of seeing this play out, right? One is, of course, the entry of women into STEM, right? In India, that is very low. Still, however, I mean, there are some positive trends there, but after they actually go through the education of, either becoming an engineer or partaking in, getting a job, getting the first job, etc. Motherhood really hits women hard because, we've seen an entire society in our generation transition to be a nuclear society. And there is no structural support that has unfortunately been built out at scale and at quality levels where women and men both feel comfortable leaving their kids behind and having sort of a extended care ecosystem built out for themselves, right? So I think and therefore, as a result, you see a lot of women dropping out of the workforce, even if they enter STEM or even if they have the education behind it at the time of maternity, right? So I think that is one big structural support and ecosystem that the private sector, the public sector needs to really come together. Communities need to come together and really solve. Right. And I just want to call out one analogy here. I was looking on Twitter recently and someone had said, was tweeting to Elon Musk about what do we need to get more women in the workforce. And someone said we need, synthetic wombs. And someone said, well, childcare. That's what we need. Right. So I think the solution is before us. We just need to address it. And therefore, the SOPs and, how do you really build out the structure? The second thing, of course, is safety. It's a very, very simple, basic issue. If you don't have safety when you're stepping out of your home to get to work, how do you, first of all, have the confidence yourself of getting to work, safely, coming back safely, working the crazy hours? This might demand of etc. So I think safety for women is something, I think, especially I think women in certain regions have to deal with, and it's a very, very real issue on a daily basis. And of course, I think the third piece in terms of the structural support is just the storytelling around narratives of success of women who are doing well. I mean, you talk about one IPO, and I think that has sort of galvanized the imagination of the nation. We've all seen the woman in the pink sari, basically declaring her company is public. But how many more of those stories can we see and can we celebrate? And even stories that maybe are not public companies, but companies that have reached a certain threshold of scale and impact and value creation. I think those stories need to come out and be part of a commonplace narrative in a regular middle class family. And that's when families can basically say, my daughter can be that, right? We change the dialogue completely. So I think these three things would really help.
So we're just talking about one, do we have an equal playing landscape for all the entrepreneurs, for especially women? Do we still have it, or is there anything lacking? And the second point was that in our recent ranking, India had a certain, there's a lot of gender gap still. How do we address this problem? How do we create that level playing field for all the gender neutral? It becomes a very gender neutral space.
Well, I'll tell you that the ecosystem is really in favor of women as such, because the kind of support which the government has given and the finances which are available through different sources, through the different bank schemes, this is very, very much in favor of women entrepreneurs. The only thing is that the atmosphere, I think the mindset, which is of course an old story, has to, it is changing in a big way, no doubt, but it's still taking time. And women are so much used to, especially in our country, in our custom, in our system, that we take, it is our prime responsibility of women to look after home affairs, which is, of course, very important, I will say. And, but keeping in mind then the kind of, the wave is going on, and every woman want to show that she is talented and she has to really do something in her life, and she has to prove herself and exploit her own creativity, which has become a sort of I will say it's in fashion now, it's in vogue. So it's very important that we create such, in such an environment, I think each woman is getting opportunity. And especially like platforms like ours, like Federation of Indian Women Entrepreneurs, we make it a point that areas, like say, for example, networking. We do networking, but we do not know how to strategize in our favor. We do many things. We get finance, but then we do not know how to prepare ourselves to get the finance. We do prepare projects, but we do not know how to get it through. So that means they need education. And they need education, they need little bit of training, they need support from the government, from the private people, the platforms like ours, platforms like Businessworld, because where women can learn things further, they can really grow if they are given that kind of a support. So this is what I feel. And as far as environment is really in favor of women entrepreneurs. It's really very much in favor. And this new normal system which has come, you can sitting at home with your own timing, with your own mobility, with your own understanding, you can create that situation. You can become creative sitting at home. You can really do many things. This is a wonderful opportunity for women, especially, I will say, starting small businesses. And I have seen, I was surprised, and I have seen that women who are surrounded, I have seen around me, that they are not leaving any opportunity. A woman started supplying, okay, the morning menu, lunch menu is this, the evening dinner menu is this. Nowadays, the problems of, servants are there. We are not having people to support us because they cannot come home, and we are afraid that they should come, and because of COVID, the problems are there. So these situations, this environment itself is creating a lot of opportunity for women as such. Yeah.
Makati, I can see you eager to post some of your thoughts on this. You heard Dr. Aggarwal. First, do you have What do you have to say? She said that, it's the right environment, it couldn't have been better.
I think, there's a lot to say because, first of all, I think it's not in fashion to be wanting to, show what we can do or what women could do. I think women have it in them. And just as how men, like I'll give you a simple example. There's a book called Invisible Women. Even your paracetamol or even your cars that a government assigns a certain structure or a certain safety module, it's designed for men. That's where we all begin. Even your paracetamol works better for men than what it would work for women. It's as simple as how who created the English language called it mankind. So that's where I think the problems begins, and acknowledging the fact that it is difficult for women, even in their own households. There is lack of support. Like I'll give you an example of one of my readers who belongs to the persons with blindness from that community is extremely, she has completed her BA, her MA, she's a psychologist, but still has gone back to doing a job of a telephone operator. This is because of the lack of opportunities or the lack of change in mindset. And we could do so much there, change a lot of mindsets. And to begin with, I think all of us should agree that there are problems and not live in a bubble where we say that, oh, there aren't, there is equal opportunities. Yes, the environment. And I think women need to talk more about it. If we ourselves are not talking about the problems that exist for people like us, like I think the ones on the panel, all of us are really privileged to have come so far. And I think we have done our bit to be here. And we've all faced those challenges. But there are women who don't have voices. There are women who need that push and they need platforms. And I don't see a lot of it being done. For instance, the program that Google's come up with, where 500 women are taken every 6 months to mentor and to help them build their businesses from a little support from people like us who've had the privilege so far. I think the government needs to take up more opportunities like that to push micro entrepreneurs, even in the smallest of, and I see the growth in their own businesses where women have supported women, and then built a business, and not one, but 3 or 4 businesses in their house, even while doing their home chores. But yes, one thing that we always shared with those women is that they need to step up and say that the men in the house need to share that workload. And it's not upon them to take care of the household work and run 3 businesses and, just you crown them as super women. We're not super women. We are just supposed to be equally getting opportunities and equally sharing the load, no matter in your house, professionally, personally, in all spheres.
Right. Well, very valid points. I think you said that we should not live in that bubble and look at just the success stories which are around, which are of course inspirational, and we need to look at it. Ms. Subramanian, taking from there, do we think that we have maybe the narrative is being built which hides a lot of real issues, when it comes to women entrepreneurship? Do you think we need to also have a look at what are still the areas, like Dr. Aggarwal said, this is the right time. Do you think there are still areas that can be improved, or should we, or is the ideal time for everything to happen?
Well, firstly, I agree that images of the Naiyya IPO have been so kind of galvanizing for all of us women entrepreneurs and for the next generation and for young girls. But what I think we need to work towards is that not being the 1 in a billion case, not being the only example that we can cite. I think we should move towards normalizing women in power more. I think we should stop penalizing women for being slightly different than men. If we have slightly more emotional intelligence, I think that's a good thing. That's just my personal opinion here. And again, taking from what Naiyya was saying, if you look at how unfortunate it is for women who want to have families and are, whether it's their choice or not, part of families, it's absolutely disbalanced. I mean, forget childcare, which we all know is impossible in this country. Some people have tried to solve it. It's not happened yet. I don't know a single person of means who would be comfortable leaving a 3-year-old in any sort of daycare or preschool or creche, and the extended family would be up in arms against it. But look even further back, when you look at maternity benefits, so many companies make women consultants and not employees, so they don't have to offer maternity benefits. And why did they do that? Because companies themselves are struggling, especially when you look at small and medium enterprises. We need more support in order to be able to offer these benefits to women who deserve them. So I feel sometimes the burden is unfairly placed on people who cannot bear it. If you are a small company and you have 5 women who are going on maternity leave, that's a very difficult situation. And then when you have women who want to come back to the workforce immediately, they get judged. And I think it's really difficult. I was part of this amazing program by Stanford University called the Stanford Seed Transformation Program. And the first immersion week, we all land in Chennai. And there's this classmate, dear friend of mine now, who's left a 3-month-old at home. And during the breaks, when everybody else is kind of out, just talking on their phones or smoking a cigarette or doing whatever they're doing, she's in a conference room and she needs people to guard the conference room because there's no lactation room, and she's pumping, right? And she's pumping and she's keeping this stuff on ice, and it's staying in the hotel cold freezer, and then she's sterilizing things in her room, and nobody's talking about this. And then you see at the other breaks, they're all the women standing out, and we're all looking at each other saying, what are you doing? And we're all ordering groceries, right? Because that is our burden. We've all got the big basket app on our phone. It doesn't matter if we're representing Stanford University, but we need to make sure our people at home have, dal chawal or whatever it is. And there's another gentleman, again, a great guy, who also has a 3-month-old. And the deck is stacked so differently because everyone comes up to this woman and says, wow, your husband must be so supportive to allow you out of the house when you have a 3-month-old. And she's like, yeah, my husband's great, but you should ask about his wife. And those are the conversations we need to have, not be embarrassed that we have children, not be embarrassed that we're taking care of our children, but really kind of look at how, if we're fortunate enough to have men who are sharing the load, to highlight that and make that the norm as well. So we're not there yet. We have a long way to go, a really, really long way to go.
I think that the baggage of playing that role, of course, I think still exists, and it is there. I mean, we can't just hide it and not accept it. I want to start with you, Dr. Aggarwal, here with my next question. That, of course, I mean, we can't deny that a lot has changed. A lot of new opportunities are there. Gender conversations are moving towards a more logical, in a more logical way. Give me a sense of, if you look back where we are and where we started from, what are the 3 big things that you think have changed as far as women in doing their own startups and starting their own ventures are concerned, in your view? Culturally, logistically, opportunity, capital-wise, all respects.
Oh, you are sort of asking me, I must share my own story for that, I mean, I started my business in 78, 80. And I started with trading business, and we had nothing in hand. And interestingly, I was writing letters to different organizations outside India, trying to get their agency, and everyone was wanting to rush to India. But when I found that the policies were not at all in place, we didn't have an open economy. There was nothing which we could import. There were high duties. Everything was so exorbitant. I mean, it was not possible to import anything. I remember a friend of mine started importing paper jeans that time, and we found that it's not economical at all. So I'm simply telling you, from that era to this era, the changes have taken place like hell. In 1980s, we introduced television, and I was one of the television manufacturers in the country. And it started when Indira Gandhi decided, the former prime minister, that she needs to be in every household, and that's why the black and white television came into the country. And from there to the color television, when Sri Lanka was faster than us and they came first, and then after that we decided, oh, we are the only country within the SARC that we don't have a color television. So that story, when you go on, we didn't know what is angel investor. We only knew banks. We didn't know what is cards. We didn't know what are the credit cards and other things. There were no such facility. I remember people like myself, Shanaz Hussain, Rita Singh, we were few, who had absolutely, we worked only on banks. We only had one source of finance, and that was bank. And after that, as the 80s came to the beginning of 90s, the things started changing. And then we had, of course, many things coming up. And then we didn't have any coach. We didn't have the words like Accelerator and bloggers and everything. We didn't know what is Facebook. We didn't know what is computer. I mean, the computer also came quite late. I remember quite late, I think the first mobile which I got from Dubai, it was 35,000 Siemens, a very heavy one, and hardly anybody in the country had. So, things have really changed to our favor. And it has really brought many favorable things. The technology, the digitization, everything has come up in a very nice way, very decent way. And it has really brought the worlds together to such a close knit thing. Today, if I want to get some information, it's just a click away. And earlier we used to only write letters. I mean, I remember doing telex. I remember doing faxes. We had no other means of communication. So,
ma'am, I want, sorry, interrupt here. Just a quick point on the cultural shift, for a woman.
So culturally also, I will say, Ruhail, culturally, because the things started changing. So culturally also, the mindset of men also started changing, because women started becoming more outgoing. We were not just behind the curtains and only limited to our duties of looking after homes and our home chores and all those things. They started coming out. It was not only the teaching jobs or the jobs where we are working as a receptionist or nothing beyond it. I remember when I started my business, when I will call up a company, they'll say, can we talk to your boss? And I'll say, oh my God, I'm my boss myself. They will not agree unless I give them all the calculations of the ultra high density molecule plastics I was dealing with. I mean, you have to prove yourself. Of course, that proving even is today there, but the mindset have changed. Today, man cannot challenge that women doesn't know anything. Women don't know anything. They know that women are equal with us. So that cultural change is very big change.
Perfect. I'm sorry to cut it.
Yeah. Please
bring in Ms. Saggi here. What are the conversations in the boardroom now? How is it? So you heard they had to, of course, get a lot of acceptance. They had to struggle for that acceptance. What are the conversations like? And how do we also ensure that more women, the barrier is low to enter, do their own business, start entrepreneurship?
Sometimes I feel it is not women who needs learning. It is men who needs learning, because the mindset has to be changed by men and not by women. Even today, when a venture capitalist asks if a boy or a girl goes for a meeting, a man or a woman go for a meeting, they will talk to men. They will prefer to talk to men. They'll not prefer to talk to women. Women, they'll ask, you have children? Who looks after them? Are you staying with your in-laws? I mean, these are the questions asked by a woman. So the board has to change their mindset.
I want to bring in Ms. Saggi here with her thoughts.
Sure. I mean, So I think just coming back to the question that you asked in terms of what are the conversations at the board level, I
Yeah.
think, Ruhail, it very much differs from board to board, context to context, right? And I think, Upasana said this earlier, I mean, this cohort is in a very rarefied atmosphere, right? We are very privileged. Just to give you some context, I mean, I have been to, have had the privilege of going to Harvard, right? So I have an MBA from Harvard. So, when you talk about establishing credibility, if forget my gender for a minute, at least that helps me establish credibility as I initiate conversations, right? But I think, and that's why I think everything is so context specific. Therefore, I mean, if you look at, of course, the boards that I have had the privilege of being part of, I've had the best experiences, but I cannot say that is true for maybe, the majority of the people who are on boards. I think the government, of course, has made a lot of sort of statutory requirements in terms of having more women representation on boards, right? I think there's also, I think the civil society has basically come up and said, not just in boards, not just in sort of a structured setting, but also in more, panel discussions or in conversations or in sort of, in how you create policies. Where are the women? Where are the voices? We demand it, right? So right from sort of press, media, government, I mean, I think the representation of women there is not something that's statutorily required, but it's something that society has come out with and really created a lot of social pressure. No more manuals, right? So I think these things, these initiatives are very promising. So when you ask me about boards, I'm going to take boards a little bit more broader than just like a corporate setting and say, where do women have influence and voice to make change, right? In terms of, I think the second question was around, I forget now, I'm sorry.
How do we make more women, look at and think about entrepreneurship? Because, I mean, they think the barriers are too high still. If you move out of big cities into smaller towns, how do we make it easily accessible to them?
So, one part, of course, is I think that there are two stories here, right? One part is about women entering entrepreneurship, and the second is about supporting women who are already entrepreneurs, right? So I think it's important to demarcate the two. I think when women are entering entrepreneurship, I think that's about normalizing the narrative and, providing financial access, right? And the same resources a man would have if he were to go to, let's say, a bank, or if even social or structural support, he could very easily go to his family and say, "Mujhe loan de do, mujhe ek business shuru karna hai." It's very normal for a woman to do that. From a social piece, I think is still something that's sort of getting formulated and articulated. I think the second piece is where women are already entrepreneurs. I mean, frankly, we all know women who maybe run sort of tailoring shops or run sort of catering businesses or have like small stationery shops or are is trying to start small preschools, right? We already know that. I think the big thing that stops them from getting to scale is, again, the access to finance and the access to capital, right? And I just want to call out, I think many times we are like, oh, but, a woman needs to learn this and this skill and that skill. Somehow we put a burden on the woman a lot more. I mean, a man can go in with the same level of traction and experience, but there is something about the fact that he's a man and the socialization we've been built in with and we grew up with, that we just attribute a lot more capability, talent, and hustle to a man, and aspiration to a man, and we are more likely to put our money and bet on him, right? I think, therefore, it's very, very critical that, like I said, how narratives are now pushing for no more manuals, right? We need to have more conversations and a lot more social pressure on basically ensuring that men and women are treated and looked at very, very equally when it comes to capability levels.
Right. Well, absolutely. Very valid point. Mr. Makati, here, how since you started your journey, give me a sense of how have things shaped up? Where are they? And you heard your panelists before you, if you want to add to it.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I started Whiteprint, I was 23. And when I was at that age, if somebody asked me, a lot of journalists would ask me questions, oh, you're a woman entrepreneur, how are things for you? And I was very naive, to say that, oh, I've never been treated differently. But when I look back now, I know that since I was young and I was a woman, I had to usually try and dress up a little more, wear some Indian clothes, or, try and look a little more, not 23, and try to look a little more, like older than what I actually was, for somebody sitting across the table for them to take me seriously. And not only men, even women sitting across the table, for them to take me seriously, I had to put in a lot of effort. And I feel like there's more friction when it comes to women on the top level, because they somehow have this notion that I have gone through, and when I was at that stage, this is what I went through. So you have so much more that you get offered, that they want to, I've had experiences where they want to make things tough for me. And I think women need to have a lot more inclusive thought process and attitude in, even when men are doing so as well. So both of them need to, women need to sort of support women and say that, yes, let's work together, let's collaborate, let's have a more open discussion about things, face the challenges and accept it and acknowledge, and then move forward. So I think it's never been really easy for me. And till today, I run the company as a single person, it's like a single person organization. So for me to face different levels, including within the family, where I am to prove that, for the fact that, oh, would you understand finances, simple things like that. But those things do happen on an everyday basis. And I think that is what we need to do: acknowledge, be open to more skill sharing, and collaborate as women together.
Absolutely. We're just running out of time. My final question to Mr. Subramanian: how do we make more women? How do we make it easier for women to think about entrepreneurship? Second, what has changed in your view culturally? Even we just heard about that women also look at women in a certain way. Has that changed? Men will look at women when they go to business. Has that changed?
I think that there is now a sense of camaraderie among women, and I think that there's a pride, especially among women in our generation, where we like to hold each other up. And I think that that is so important, and that's what we really need to hold on to. And it's when we hold each other up that we start holding our daughters up. And I think what we really need to do is start enforcing this from when kids are in school. We need to stop saying stupid things like girls don't understand math. We need to stop saying, oh, boys don't cry. We need to really look at more gender neutral ways of raising children. And we need to talk about entrepreneurship from a very young age. We need to make sure that people are open to the idea of creating something new, and that business isn't bad, making money isn't evil. By running your own business, you can still make the world a better place. So I think we're definitely moving in the right direction. And I think what would really be beneficial is to have more communities and more spaces where women can just interact at the different levels that they are. They can just show up and not be judged. They can vent if they need to. They can get help if they need to. And I think that sense of community and that sense of companionship is incredibly important. And I personally have benefited from it. I'm sure the other wonderful ladies on the panel have as well. And that's something that we don't acknowledge enough. I think it's really women holding each other up, and we should continue to do that.
Thank you. I would have loved to ask more questions. We're just out of time, but thank you so much, everyone, for sharing your thoughts. And I know we will see more success stories as we move on, especially from the women entrepreneurs. On that note, thank you, everyone, for joining.